The internet informs me that the technical term for what happens when you pour boiling water into a glass vessel, aka shattering, is actually called thermal shock. And I was thinking about that perhaps it is thermal shock that God and the angels are considering when they imagine, in ancient Midrash, the creation of the world. At first, the text tells us God planned to create the world only with justice. But upon reflection, God seems to understand that that's not actually a world that can flourish. We need space to screw up and try again. Bringing only justice to the world, God realizes, would be a thermal shock. The world could not contain it. So too, though, with God's next idea. Perhaps the opposite. God says, I'll create a world of only mercy. But then God thinks and imagines that world would actually be filled with sin, that there would be nothing to balance out our bad decisions and impulsive behaviors. A world of only mercy, too, would then be a thermal shock. And so the Midrash concludes, therefore, I will create a world with both attributes, mercy and justice, and thus it may endure. Now, I share this not only because tradition imagines Rosh Hashanah as a celebration of the moment of creation, but also because justice and mercy are for the rabbis and for me defining attributes of this season. Think about Avinu Malkeinu, the image of the stern ruler and the loving parent. Think about the words we sing in beloved melody. Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu va'anenu, ki ein banu masim. Aseh imanu tzedakah v'chesed, v'hoshienu Avinu Malkeinu. Favor us and answer us, for we have no accomplishments. Deal with us, tzedakah v'chesed, with justice and with mercy, and deliver us. So as we enter this Shabbat Shuvah and these 10 days of repentance, really, actually, we're down to about 8, but who's counting? Actually, 7. I want to offer a few texts that I love about these attributes and invite you to consider them tonight in Chavruta with the people near you. And if you're at home, we invite you to share comments in the chat so you can be Chavruta, you can be learning partners with each other. So first, a text of the shofar service. Rabbi Yehuda ben Nachman begins from the book of Psalms. God ascends with a blast, the Lord with the sound of a shofar. Rabbi Yehuda ben Nachman teaches when the Holy Blessed One sits and ascends on the throne of justice, God ascends in justice. And when Israel takes out their shofars and sounds them before the Holy Blessed One, in that moment, God rises from the throne of justice and sits on the throne of mercy, as it is written, Adonai with the sound of a shofar, and then it says when? In the 7th month. That's just to tell us that they're talking about Rosh Hashanah. So you're going to turn to each other for just a moment, and here is your question for Chavruta, for you at home also. Why do you think God begins on the throne of justice rather than on the throne of mercy? So turn to someone near you, whether it's someone you know or don't, and you're going to take like a minute to answer that. And you too at home. Okay, I know. I told you, just a second. You can talk about it over your dinners later. I'm really giving you food for thought. So the second text picks up on this one, same imagery, but gives what I think is another insight. Ramban, the great medieval philosopher, offers the following explanation of why perhaps Rosh Hashanah is called, Yom in Torah is called not Rosh Hashanah, we don't see that in the Torah, but Yom Tru'ah, the day on which the shofar is sounded. And he writes, Yom Hazikaron Yom HaTru'ah, says it's clear that everything depends on repentance, but he says on the new year, God is concerned entirely with the attribute of justice and conducts the world only by that attribute. And on Yom Kippur, God is concerned entirely with the attribute of mercy. He goes on to say, thus, the new year is a day of judgment in mercy And the Day of Atonement is a day of mercy and judgment. So I was originally going to ask, I do have a question for you, but I was originally going to ask, does anything about this text surprise you? But I'm going to tell you that what surprises me is I don't experience, maybe I do now, but I don't think of Yom Kippur as the day of mercy. It's not celebratory, it's not soft, right? For most of us, Yom Kippur feels like the day of justice, right? It's strict, we're in the white, we're not wearing the leather, we're not eating, we're hungry, we're cranky, right? Like it does not feel super merciful. So I'm going to turn to you now, and with that, the question I'm going to have you think about for another moment, why do you think Ramban introduces us, or why he considers Yom Kippur a day of mercy? So that's your next question, and I'm looking forward later to reading the comments at home, so I hope you're participating too. I can tell you I hear a lot about the idea of a forgiving God, which I think, yeah, that's sort of where I went to. But lastly, tonight, I want to take us to Jerusalem. I wish I could really take us all to Jerusalem right now, but to a gate that has actually been sealed shut for the better part of 2,000 years. But before we go to that gate, I want to start with an Israeli song from 1992, written by Meir Banai, about the streets of the city where his family got their start. His grandfather, or great-grandfather, there's different accounts, was one of the first merchants at Shuk Machne Yehuda in the market in Jerusalem. The song is called Shar HaRachamim, the gates of mercy, and he sings, I'm just going to say, I'm not going to sing. Chai pa'am rak pa'am, I live just once. There's a sense and there's no sense, with strength or without strength, Shar HaRachamim, the gate of mercy. He says, Boi iti yachad, boi mitoch hapachad. Come with me together, come from within the fear, because you also are a part of the gate of mercy. So when the temple stood, this eastern gate that we're going to now, it was opened only at this time of year, only for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, it says it was through this gate that the priests would lead that scapegoat who was sent out into the wilderness to carry the sins of the people. And our ancient texts also teach it is through this gate that the Messiah, or the Messianic figure, will one day enter Jerusalem. They'll have to unseal the gate first, apparently. But here's something I learned about it that I didn't know, that it is actually a double gate. And one side is commonly called Shar HaRachamim, the gate of mercy, and the other side, Shar HaDin, the gate of justice. So in between these gates, your final Chavruta question for tonight. Which of these gates, the gate of justice or the gate of mercy, feels more open to you this year, and why? And I'm going to say you don't have to share this one in Chavruta. This can be a Chavruta with yourself, but maybe you're going to go home and you're going to jot down what you thought, or I guess more likely jot down what you thought. But I want us to think about that, because this is where we stand as Shabbat Shuvah begins. This is our work of these Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, these 10 days of repentance. Entering holy time and holy space, each of us is asked to walk between justice and mercy. The gates are open now, and the time is short. We are, all of us, ki at gam at chelek, we are, all of us, part of the gate of mercy. And my prayer, maybe this year, maybe every year, is that that be the gate that stay open for us. Shabbat Shalom and Shana Tova.